In this video, we're going to talk about a special type of particle called an ion, which is based on an atom. For this video, you are going to need your periodic table because I am going to ask you to write some things on it. Once you have all of your stuff ready, let's go. All right, so a general atom is neutrally charged, right? That goes back all the way to Dalton's atomic theory. Atoms are electrically neutral. So what that means is that for an atom to be electrically neutral, the number of protons and the number of electrons has to be the same. But as we talked about when we were doing proton, neutron, and electron counting, there are times where particles are charged, meaning they have a different number of electrons. Those charged particles are what we call ions. Now, our first type of ion is the one that's going to have a positive charge. A positive charge comes from a loss of electrons, and this is what's called a cation. So if losing electrons is a cation, what do you think gaining electrons is going to be called? No, it's not a dog ion. Cations come from the phrase cathode, which is a terminal on a battery. The other terminal on a battery is called the anode, so we have what's called an anion. That's gaining electrons. That means that it's going to have a negative charge. Now again, leave a little bit of room under these because I'm going to have the next two slides go over these in a little bit more detail. Right, so we'll start off with cations. So cations typically are formed by metals. Metals lose electrons, so metals are losers. The name of a cation is the same as the name of the metal that creates it, right? So we have on the left our magnesium atom, which is 12 protons and 12 electrons. If we take away a couple of electrons, we get what's called the magnesium ion, which is Mg with a +2 charge. Now, some metal ions, especially the ones in the center of the table, can have more than one stable charge. If that happens, we put a Roman numeral as part of the name to indicate what the charge is. So for example, iron can have two stable charges, +2 or +3. The +2 form we call iron 2, so Fe2+, and the iron with a +3 charge we call iron 3, Fe3+. If cations are generally formed by metals losing electrons, what do you think anions are going to be formed by? They're going to be formed by nonmetals because nonmetals tend to gain electrons, right? So what we have is we have a chlorine atom. Chlorine atoms have 17 protons and 17 electrons. We add an electron to it. That extra electron gives us a negatively charged ion, which is called the chloride ion. Anions formed from elements, you change the ending to IDE, right? So chlorine becomes chloride. Sulfur becomes sulfide. You don't have to worry about multiple charges on these because anions typically only form one charge. So it's just the root name of the element IDE. Now here's where you're going to need your periodic table because what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you label the common charges. Group 1, the first column on the periodic table. All the ions in this group form a +1 charge. So we're going to put +1 at the top of the group. All ions in the second column, which is called group 2, will form a +2 charge. Now that small depressed region in the center, we're going to skip over that for now. We're going to get to this column over here on the right after it starts going back up again. In this column, and I'm actually going to go underneath the boron, aluminum and the elements underneath that will typically form a +3 charge. The next group starts off with carbon and silicon at the top. Carbon and silicon don't really form charges, right? They form what are called covalent bonds, so they don't form these charged particles. The metals underneath don't have one charge, they can have multiple, so we're going to leave this column blank. Just know that tin and lead are metals. They will form positive ions, but there are a couple of different ones they'll form. The next column over, nitrogen. Nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, this group will form a -3 charge. If we go over one more from that, oxygen, sulfur, selenium, that's going to be a -2 charge. And if we go over one more from that, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, this column is going to form a -1 charge. The last column, the noble gases, don't form a charge. The reason why is because they don't bond with anything, so they have no reason to lose or gain electrons. Now, as to the center region that we skipped over a little bit, the thing about this is a lot of elements in this region can have multiple charges, so we're going to kind of leave it blank. There are some elements that will only form one charge, like, for example, zinc is always going to be +2, silver is always going to be +1. But for most of these elements, they can form multiple stable charges, so we'll use them individually as we need them. Don't worry about knowing those. All right, so those are ions, and I will see you guys for the next video.